From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good evening. My name is Loris John Schissel, and I'm from the music division here in the Library of Congress. And I thought, even though we can't see it with the curtain here, with that magnificent view out there of the Capitol, I thought it would be wonderful, given the events we are celebrating tonight, to open our little portion of the program this evening with our national anthem. Now, this national anthem arrangement is very special. It comes from our Port Royal band books, which are period Civil War band books that we have in the music division. And this arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner was the same arrangement played out of this little book that was played when the flag was rehoisted at Fort Sumter at the end of the Civil War. So if you would all join in standing and singing along, if you wish, our national anthem. 1, 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Librarian of Congress, James H. Billington.
Welcome to you all, especially Madison Council members, Liljenquist family and friends all, and history. History, that is the old History Channel, now history. Tonight we are previewing an exhibition that marks the start of the Civil War, when that first shot was fired in the pre-dawn hours of April 12th, 1861. That began the library's commemoration. This evening begins the library's commemoration of the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, and it will be continued and, in a sense, reach a climax in a mega exhibition which we will have opening in the fall of next year on the Civil War itself. Now, you just heard the Federal City Brass Band, which recreates the sound and appearance of a Union Army regimental brass band of the 1860s. Their instruments are originals dating to the mid-19th century. Tonight, the band will be playing music from the library's Port Royal band books collection, named because it was on Port Royal Island, South Carolina, near Hilton Head, which may be a more familiar location, that the band, under the leadership of Gustavus Ingalls, spent the greater part of the Civil War. So we want to thank the Liljenquist family above all, but also history and also Union Pacific for support of this exhibition. This evening, you will see faces in this unique and astonishing collection of early ambrotype and tintype photographs that will make the human aspect of the Civil War more real to you than any textbook novel, or movie. The Liljenquist family collection has put a human face on an event that killed more soldiers than all other U.S. wars combined through Vietnam. It was the largest and the most costly of human life war on the entire planet for the century between the end of the Napoleonic Wars and the beginning of World War I. It was also the first war that was photographed and the first war that was fought with rifles, which produced an accuracy that Smoothbore weapons never had, and as a result produced this enormous number of casualties. And the pictures you will see tonight are in many cases the last picture that family ever had of those young men and women involved in the war. You may be haunted by the eyes of these soldiers and their families, many of them so very young. The Liljenquist family collection is a recently acquired jewel and an important addition to the library's unparalleled Civil War collections, but it is an exhibition of a very special kind that speaks to the humanity in all of us, and following, and indeed, in a way, anticipating the Veterans History Project, which the library has been undertaking about wars in the 20th century, reminding us that the worst war of all was not just because it was a civil war, but because it was so costly of human life. The entire collection of way over now 700 photographs is available for you to explore on the web, thanks to the generosity and the cooperation of the Liljenquist family, so many of whose members are here tonight. And it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Liljenquist, who with his three sons, Jason, Brandon, and Christian. Brandon and Christian are also with us tonight, assembled this beautiful collection and has generally made it available to the American people. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tom and Christian Liljenquist, who will speak to us about this remarkable donation to the American people on this important historical occasion.
Well, I think I'm going to let my young son do most of the speaking tonight. But I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Dr. Billington, it's a great honor to be here. So many friends, and I'm just overwhelmed to be here in this beautiful library. It's just amazing that our collection is ending up in such an amazing place. I saw many of the people here tonight that we have purchased photographs from over the years. Nick Harris and Karen Eubanks from the regimental headquarters in Fredericksburg. I'd like to recognize them. The Small family, Wes, Sam, Pat, and Bonnie Zulo are here from the Horse Soldier in Gettysburg. Don Stoops from the Sharpsburg Arsenal in Sharpsburg, Maryland. And just Rick Brown from Leesburg, Virginia. I just want to thank you for all the wonderful photographs that you've provided to our family over the last 15 years. It's just been great. A lot of fun dealing with you all. I also want to thank 4 people in particular at this library. I'd like to thank everyone at the library. Everyone's been magnificent. But 4 people in particular who really inspired us to donate this collection to this institution. And that's Helena Zinkham, chief of the Princeton Photographs Division, and Carol Johnson, the curator of 19th century photography. They're amazing, passionate people that our family and our boys have really enjoyed working with. Also in the exhibit, in building this exhibit that you're going to see in a few minutes, I want to thank Jake Jacobs and Cheryl Reagan. It's just been a pleasure to work with these wonderful people. So thank you very much, and my son Christian is going to speak for our family now. Please.
Thank you, Dad, and thank you all for coming for this wonderful event. I'm very, very excited to be here and to talk to you this evening. Dr. Billington, I have to say, this is my favorite library that I've ever been in. No books. But seriously, these Civil War pictures that my family and I have been collecting have been a wonderful part of our lives. When I was little, I didn't know much about the Civil War. I learned a bit in school, but my dad mostly taught me. I think I appreciate this a lot more because when I see pictures of dead or wounded soldiers, I feel very close to them because of our collection. When we were living in my old house in Arlington, Virginia, where my best friends are living, the D'Annunzios, there was a house that got torn down right down the street from us. So knowing my dad, he probably searched up on the internet, major war spot in Arlington, Virginia. So he took me down to the house with a metal detector to look for artifacts. I don't think I would find anything, but little did I know there was a battle fought in Arlington, Virginia near this house. About 10 minutes into our search, my metal detector started beeping. My dad ran over and started to dig. I noticed something lying in the dirt. When my dad pulled it out, it was a U.S. belt buckle worn by a Union soldier. After that experience, I really became interested in the Civil War. Later, when we were bidding to win Civil War photographs on eBay, I asked my dad if I could click the mouse at the last second so no one could outbid us. We won the item, and I've been clicking ever since. For as long as I can remember, I haven't lost one, but maybe my dad just isn't telling me that I lost so I don't feel bad. Before we donated the Civil War photos to the Library of Congress, we had them all laid out around our house, in the basement, the kitchen, the dining room. And at night, when we were all ready for bed in our room, and at night, when we were all ready for bed in our separate rooms, and it was quiet, you could hear footsteps walking around. I know it sounds crazy, but it was very true. I never believed in ghosts, and I never thought I would say this, but ghosts are definitely real in some cases. I also believe in them because when we moved out of our house in Arlington, we left the photos in the basement closets. So when the D'Annunzios were there, they could hear footsteps too and mysterious things were happening. But once we moved them out of their house and into ours, weird things stopped happening in their house and started in ours. Dr. Billington, the strange things have now stopped in our house. Please tell me when they start happening here. Oh, and Dr. Billington, do you know how young kids my age got to fight in the Civil War? Well, they took a marker, they took a marker and they took off their shoe and they wrote 18 on the bottom. And when the recruiting officer came over, they could honestly say that they were over 18. And now I'm going to read you an essay that my brother wrote. Have you ever seen a picture of a person you knew you would never forget? Has a photograph ever changed your opinion on an important issue? The image of an American Civil War drummer boy had that effect on me. Reaching across time to challenge my beliefs about what makes an army great, leading me on a journey that would end in the vaulted halls of the Library of Congress. We acquired the photograph at a Civil War auction. It was a tintype photograph of a Union soldier carrying a drum. It was identified as George Weeks of the 8th Maine Infantry and was accompanied by several handwritten letters between Weeks and his mother. Weeks' story came to life for us with every word we read. In a letter dated October 12, 1865, George wrote to his mother, "I am coming home at last. I have served 3 years in the greatest army that was ever known." At first, we laughed at Weeks' bravado. As lifelong residents of Virginia, we'd heard all about the Civil War, and we were certain about which army was the greater army. The bravery and fighting spirit of the Confederates was legendary. When equally equipped, the Confederate Army had always outmatched their Union counterparts. Stonewall Jackson's lightning troops' maneuvers in Shenandoah Valley were famous. General Robert E. Lee is still considered America's greatest military genius. Weeks's pride, and maybe our own, drove us to investigate further. With help from the National Archives in Washington, D.C., we gained access to George Weeks's military record. Weeks contracted malaria while serving with his regiment in South Carolina. Later, at Petersburg, Virginia, he was severely wounded. As a disabled veteran, Weeks struggled with malaria for several years. We were saddened to learn that he lost his battle with the disease at age 21. In the words of President Abraham Lincoln, Weeks had given the last full measure of devotion. It was no longer easy to dismiss his words. Over time, as my brothers and I learned more about the Civil War, we came to fully understand the meaning of Weeks's words. We came to learn the ideals an army embraces are what makes it great, not its military prowesses. Weeks and his fellow soldiers were the emancipators of race. They were champions of democracy, an idea much of the world expected to fail. That idea, that great experiment in self-government, is what they died for. It's what they saved, the United States of America. We gained a new respect for Weeks, who truly had served in the greatest army that was ever known. In the summer of 2009, the Washington Post published deeply moving photos of the U.S. servicemen killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Upon seeing them, Jason and I were struck with an idea. We envisioned a way to use our own collection of photos as a Civil War memorial. From our collection, we would select 412 of the best images, 360 Union soldiers, one for every 1,000 who died, and 52 Confederate, one for every 5,000 that died. Presented together, we believe the photographs would illustrate our nation's loss of 620,000 lives in a way never before shown in the history book. That fall, we approached the Library of Congress with the idea for our memorial. We knew immediately we found the right home for the collection and went home excitedly to discuss it with the whole family. It was with great pleasure that in March of 2010, we decided as a family to donate our collection of Civil War photographs to the Library of Congress. We intend to keep adding to it, and we couldn't be happier that the collection will now be preserved for everyone to enjoy and to share. Laying out the photographs at home for the last time and thinking about the collection in a whole new light, I couldn't help but notice how similar these soldiers were to those we'd seen in the Washington Post. These were the young men who did most of the fighting and dying. In their eyes and the eyes of their loved ones, I could see the full range of human emotion. It was all here, the bravado, the fear, the readiness, the weariness, the pride, and the anguish. The loneliness in their long-distance stares overwhelmed me. As I held Weeks's image in my hand, I noticed he was gazing beyond his photographer, maybe perhaps beyond his own death. His eyes appeared fixed on a distant horizon, a place he has found peace and comfort, a place where the killing has stopped, where there is justice and freedom for all. As a family, we would like to dedicate this photographic memorial, the last full measure, to George Weeks, Union soldier and drummer boy of the 8th Maine Infantry, and to all U.S. servicemen and servicewomen throughout time, each of whom has taken us one step closer to that distant, elusive horizon. Lastly, I just want to acknowledge my dad and tell him how much I and all of us really appreciate what he has done for us and maybe even the country. Dad, I want you to know that I love you more than you could ever imagine, and what you have done is amazing. We all appreciate how much time and effort it took you to do this. You are the best dad anyone could ever wish for. You are the most generous person I know, and you would do anything for me and Jason and Brandon. So in honor of my dad, I think we should all give him a big round of applause to show him that we are very proud of him. It was great speaking in front of you all this evening, so thank you and enjoy the night.
I think you'll all agree that not only is a great collection of intrinsic value, but the way it's collected, the people who gather it together, and this is true of all institutions that benefit and are able to show important things, that we're indebted not only to the people who created those photographs and the people who are being photographed, but to the people who gathered in all these scattered things and made it possible for all of us to relive the war that was fought by the people who actually fought it, many of whom never returned, but can now be memorialized. So this really is a great thing that the Liljenquist family has done, And in honor of that, I'd like to present a couple of things here. The framed facsimile of the Gettysburg Address, a Lincoln image that is very special also to the entire Liljenquist family, plus 3 special books that were prepared for our Lincoln exhibit, which is just closed and toured the country to record crowds, for the 3 sons who worked with such a remarkable father. So this to Tom, and the books would be to the two sons who were here, as well as the third one. So well, our thanks are real, and this will be a small token of our gratitude and appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Libby O'Connell, who's Chief Historian, Senior Vice President of Corporate Outreach for the History Channel. History is a key supporter of this exhibition and has also had a relationship with the library for the last 3 years. Producers and researchers are mining the riches of our collections to produce more programming that encourages America and Americans to think about their own and our collective history. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Libby O'Connell.
Thank you, Dr. Billington. And let me just make a note here. Try not to follow Chris Liljenquist when you stand up at it after. Yeah, well, anyway, this is a hard act to follow. But what a pleasure it is to be here. It's always a treat to be in this wonderful temple of learning with beautiful decorative arts everywhere you look, and the fabulous treasures of knowledge that are here, and also the people I pointed out this morning, the curatorial group that have worked so hard. They are our true treasures, and it's just a real honor for me to be here today representing the History Channel. Or history, as Dr. Billington likes to call us. No, that's a joke, actually. We thank the Library of Congress for giving us this singular opportunity to take part in displaying this hauntingly beautiful Civil War portrait collection. William Faulkner noted in Absalom that the past is never dead, it's not even past. And when you see these portraits tonight, I guarantee that you will see the eyes, in the eyes of those people and the young people that are depicted, the emotions and the sort of the humanity that is with us today. They are so compelling and so touching. It's remarkable. And I just want to thank the Liljenquist family for their generosity and their public spiritedness in giving this to the American people. It's really a delight for the History Channel to be a sponsor here tonight. We are very pleased to reinforce the strength of our commitment to the Library of Congress, as well as to recognize the Civil War's impact on our American history. In fact, today we're kicking off a number of commitments to the public. Our Give 150 campaign, which was launched this morning, will help preserve and protect historic Civil War sites and stories with partners such as the Civil War Trust and the National Park Foundation. We also have a contest going out among young people called the National Civil War Student Challenge, where kids compete against each other online in an online game, and then later face-to-face, almost like a spelling bee, only it's going to be about the Civil War in pursuit of scholarships for them to go on to college. But all of these things I'm mentioning because they're part of our whole campaign to help remind America just how relevant the Civil War is to our lives today. As the park says, from the Civil War to civil rights, this watershed in our past is something that lives on, and we are grateful to the Library of Congress for exhibiting the wonderful collection that the Liljenquist family has acquired and donated, because it is just one more fabulous example of what the Library of Congress does so well in sharing the knowledge and bringing people from all over the nation here and online to share in those riches. So thank you very much for having us here tonight. We are honored to be a sponsor and proud to be part of this wonderful exhibit.
Thank you very much, Dr. O'Connell. Now, finally, I am happy to be introducing, after thanking again history and Dr. O'Connell for coming down from New York for this occasion and for all she does. Ira Berlin is a distinguished university professor at our near neighbor, the University of Maryland, the recipient of numerous prestigious awards and grants for his extensive work on American history and the larger Atlantic world in the 18th and 19th centuries, beginning with his prize-winning Slaves Without Masters, the Free Negro in the Antebellum South in 1975. He has won numerous prizes and is past president of the Organization of American Historians, and he's also serving as a senior advisor to the Library of Congress for the entire Civil War commemoration in which we are now further embarking. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present Dr. Ira Berlin.
Libby, you are also a pretty hard act to follow. This is kind of like coming to bat with the bases loaded. A lot of pressure here. We are now in the midst of commemorating, for some of us, actually reliving, it seems, what is 150 years after the fact, surely the greatest moment in American history, the Civil War. No event, perhaps with the exception of the Revolution, which created the nation, can match the Civil War with either for drama or for significance. More than a century later, it continues to stir our interest, as we see here today, and perhaps even our deepest emotion. Clothed in the rhetoric of biblical prophecy and national destiny, the Civil War destroyed forever a way of life based upon the ownership of human beings. It restored to some 4 million men and women who had previously been categorized as little more than furniture, proprietorship in their own persons. It liquidated, without compensation, private property worth billions of dollars. It remade citizenship and placed citizenship on new ground defined by the federal Constitution. And in handing over a monopoly of sovereignty to this newly consolidated nation state, it remade the United States, it remade the American people, and set American history on a radically different course. Now, at the center of this massive transformation, in fact, driving those changes, were the men who fought the war and who were, in the most intimate, the most personal, the most permanent ways, transformed themselves by the war. At present, the United States fights its wars with a volunteer army whose daily struggles are, in fact, really mostly beyond the lives of most Americans, except for those occasional heart-stopping moments when we discover some neighbor's child has been subject to some terrible, terrible event, or, as Chris mentioned, the young men's faces appear, young women's faces as well. People of great promise appear in the papers, the Washington Post or the New York Times. The Civil War was different. It directly involved almost all of the American people. When we look at those soldiers' faces in the collection, we will see what America looks like at mid-century. Some 2.25 million men served in the Union Army. That's fully 40% of all Northern men of between ages of 15 and 40. Multiply that by 5, conservatively estimating what the average size of the American family was in the middle of the 19th century. We get over 11 million out of a population of 19 million in 1860. The proportion of the population that's directly touched by the war is still greater in the Confederacy, where some 58% of those adult men served in the Army. And it's still greater still to the black population, which is at risk of military service. We think of that experience and how it echoes through American life. The soldiers who meet those highs of victory and then those lows of defeat, the great triumphs, the sense of camaraderie, and then the losses and perhaps the sense of shame. Chris mentioned the slaughter of the war, and death was everywhere. Some 10% of Northern white men who serve in the Army die, some 18% of those who were in Confederate service, some 20% of the black men who served in the Union Army do not return. We can multiply that by the number of people who are injured, mutilated. The empty sleeve is a figure of American life after the war and for the rest of the century. The people who are sickened, the people who are traumatized by the war, we get a greater and greater sense of how the war touched the American people. For years, we have followed the memory and how the memory of the war shaped American life. Everything from marriage patterns and the possibility of getting married, which is cut off to so many young women. The partisan allegiances that are created, and people are voting as they served in the Civil War, of course, well into the 20th century. The sense of self, which is created by this massive war of who the American people were and who they wanted to be. A small figure, some 70%, think of this, 70% of the federal budget in 1880 was used to pay the pension of simply Union soldiers. Who were these men who are at the center of this conflict? The exhibit that we inaugurate tonight allows us, and then beginning tomorrow will allow the American people to see the faces of a small sample of those young men, some 412 in the exhibit and several hundred more that are online. We see those men, a handful of women and children as well, white and black. We see Northerners and Southerners. We see free and newly freed people. And the first thing we'll see is the striking, unbelievably striking youth of these. Many young men, and barely out of their teens, and some who clearly have not made it there. We see people's faces who are also old, beyond their years. We see the effects of the war on them as well. We see them in many ways as they want to be seen in their uniforms, their haversacks, their campaign hats. The hats are absolutely marvelous, jaunty, serious, droll, flippant. The way people are wearing their hats. We see them with their flags, their escutcheons, their guns, their knives, their swords, their bugles, even a guitar. We see some of them with their families as well. We can gauge a little bit about their world. That's a great gift to us at the beginning of the 20th century. That's what we see. That's what's visible. But these pictures invite us to imagine, to think ourselves back into the world. History is about imagination. History is about thinking ourselves back into another universe. So look at them in the eyes, blink twice. Perhaps we can get a sense of the loneliness and the separation from kin. Blink again. We see newly created families, camaraderies. Blink again. We can imagine something about the routine, the drilling, the standing picket, the cleaning weapons, the polishing shoes, the policing camps, the utter boredom of war. And then we think of those moments, those other moments, the chaos of battle, the noise, the blood, the gore, the moment when a bullet hits you and you don't know whether that's the end, or maybe it is the end all too quickly, or looking aside and seeing a buddy's guts just lying on the field of battle. We can imagine ourselves into a different world with these pictures. These pictures stretch our historical understanding. Tonight we celebrate this extraordinary collection of extraordinary man, Tom Liljenquist, and his sons, Jason, Brandon, and of course Kristen back there, he who steals the stage. We're very, very proud of. We're very, very proud of Kristen. This is a magnificent addition to our understanding of the past, a magnificent addition to who the American people were, and in some ways, of course, who the American people are. I would like to end by adding words to those pictures. The words I'm going to read are those of John Sweeney. John Sweeney is a slave working in a Kentucky tobacco factory early before the Civil War. Literally, just before the war, he saved enough to buy his own freedom. And when the war begins, and finally, when black men are allowed to go in the Union Army, he enlists. He rises to the rank of sergeant, which is just about as high as any black soldier can rise during the Civil War. There are certain exceptions, but becoming a non-commissioned officer is probably about it. And it says something about John Sweeney that he's reached that goal. In October of 1865, about 6 months after the war has ended, Sweeney writes to Clinton B. Fisk, a general in the Union Army who had recently been appointed a commissioner of the Freedmen's Bureau in Kentucky, and he explains in some ways to Clinton Fisk what he understands the war is about, how it's transformed him, and how he understands his world as he has become a free person who's gone into the war and the edge of freedom, has been transformed from property to a person, has been transformed from a person to a soldier in the world's most powerful army, a winning army, who's going to be very quickly transformed from a soldier to a citizen with those Civil War amendments, who's going to be transformed from a citizen ultimately to somebody who can actually hold office in the United States. Let me read the words of John Sweeney. Sir, I have the honor to call your attention to the necessity of having a school for the benefit of our regiment. We have never had such an institution of that sort, and we stand deeply in need of instruction, the majority of us having been slaves. We wish to have some benefit of education, to make ourselves capable of the business of the future. We have established a literary association which flourished previous to our march to Nashville. We wish to become a people capable of self-support, just as we're capable of being soldiers. My home is Kentucky, where prejudice reigns like the mountain oak, and I do lack the cultivation of mind that would have a tendency to cast a doubt over my future life if I had not been in United States service. I've had a leave of absence the last few weeks on a furlough, and it made my heart ache to see my race of people there neglected, ill-treated on account of lack of education, being incapable of putting their complaints or applications in writing, for want of education and ignorance of the great good work of the federal government on our behalf. We are soldiers who have officers who are protection to teach us how to act and do, but sir, what we want is a general system of education in our regiment for our moral and literary elevation, these being our motives. We have the honor to call your very high consideration, respectfully, your most humble servant, John Sweeney. Soldiering prepared these men for the business of the future, and it is that future which we'll see in the face of many of the young men in this collection. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we would like to thank Professor Berlin very much. We'd like to present you as a small token of our appreciation, a book that commemorates this beautiful building, in which you have enriched us with a very powerful statement of what the war really was, what it meant, and we thank you for this, and happy to present this small token of our gratitude. Now, I want to thank once again the Liljenquist family, whose remarkable vision and persistence and good humor and enthusiasm will continue in the exhibit, which, because Tom Liljenquist and his sons are wonderful guides and inspirations there, as well as they have been here. Following the performance that is going to follow, because we have to end with music, having such this Federal City Brass Band here with us, I hope you will then proceed this way, and since we don't want to complete jam up in the exhibition, which is on the other side, if it's sort of in some rough sense, without the stern discipline of military, you can find about half of you going into the exhibit, while the other half have something to eat and refresh themselves, and then reversing the trend, and so that everyone gets a chance to both see this remarkable exhibition. There will be curators there, as well as the wonderful Liljenquist family, to explain things to you in the exhibit, and there will be refreshments here. And we thank you all, and most particularly members of the Madison Council and the chairman, Jerry Lenfest, who are gathering here in this beautiful space to remember this important and very decisive event. So thank you also, Mr. Connell, and thank you, Professor Berlin, for making this really a very memorable occasion. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Divide your time in some undisciplined but relatively mathematically precise method, half and half between the reception and the exhibit. And thank you all for being here, and thank you once again to the Liljenquists for this making this occasion possible. Thank you all.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.